I've, you've really, I guess, tempted me to go down the road on this one before you, and I'm just kind of wondering, where is Murray going with this? All right, we've got Bill Murray. This is the INFRAGARD editorial, and he's talking about the Social Security number. Now, you're not going to be like that other guy from LifeLock and giving out your Social Security number, are you?
No, I'm not.
All right, Bill, go ahead, take it away.
It was a great year. I was born. The Hoover Dam was completed. The Golden Gate Bridge was well under construction. The Social Security Act was passed. Because of the limitations of the information technology of the day, that is, punched cards and keyed data entry, the Act required that each participant be identified by a unique 9-digit number which would come to be called the Social Security number. The government promised the citizen that the number would never be used for any other purpose, and specifically it would never be used to collect taxes. They lied. Eventually, the number would be extended from program participants to all workers, then to all citizens, eventually to include children and infants. Not only is it used to collect taxes, that is now one of its primary purposes. It is now a requirement for admission to school, for employment, for credit, for medical care, for driver's license, to register to vote, even for a bank account. Many of these uses are abusive on their face. It is an abuse to place arbitrary conditions on the access of citizens to schooling. It is an abuse to deny people employment, the right to drive or to vote. However, the Congress, in its wisdom, has decided that these otherwise abusive practices are necessary to public policy on the basis of the state's need to identify and know the identity of the citizen. Perhaps the most abusive practice is the use of knowledge of the relatively possible Social Security number as evidence of identity. Said another way, we use the Social Security number as an authenticator rather than an identifier. This perverse practice relies upon secrecy of the Social Security number, which limits its value as an identifier. Because the consumer credit industry relies upon this practice, it makes the consumer vulnerable to loan application fraud, so-called identity theft. Thus, while we continue to use it as an identifier for federal programs like Medicare, we no longer use it for state programs such as student, driver, or voter ID. While the states may still collect it and condition rights upon it, they're expected to keep it secret, an expectation from which they do not benefit and are poorly equipped to meet. A few years ago, I had lunch with a senior security colleague from the Social Security Administration. I pointed out that modern database technology had all but eliminated the need for the Social Security number. In these modern systems, there is no length limitation to the individual identity information. We can easily record all of the information on the birth certificate. This information, including date, time, place of birth, and name of parents, is absolutely unique. There are no duplicates. In a point-and-click world, once recorded, this information need never be key-entered again. It has so much redundancy in it that it is not error-prone. Selection and feedback would limit errors even more than the Social Security number has done. Because he kept nodding as I talked, I thought I was convincing him. Then, after agreeing with me in principle,
Go ahead.
after agreeing with me in principle, Social Security no longer owns the number. It's now owned by the Internal Revenue Service. But then he went on to point out some of the real problems. Many of us do not go by the identity information on our birth certificates at all times and for all purposes. In fact, we rarely use any more of it than is required to uniquely identify us within a small population. For obvious reasons, women usually take the names of their husbands and children. While they keep the identity that they were born with, they may change their names, at least for some purposes, many times. Even men may change their names, for many reasons, some legitimate, some not quite so. Men may take on aliases, pseudonyms, or simply names that they prefer to the ones that were chosen by their parents. Even for those applications where birth certificate identity might otherwise serve, we rarely collect it all. This leaves us with the problem of duplicates. John Smith's, Solomon Cohen's, and even Bill Murray's. Social Security number is often the easiest way to disambiguate name. The conflicting requirements that we put upon the Social Security number create an over-constrained problem, one for which there is simply no solution in the real world. Were there a solution, surely all the time and energy devoted to its discovery would have found it. Certainly, it is not in our hands as law enforcement or information security professionals. That said, there are practices that we can mandate or at least recommend that will meet the requirements for using the Social Security number while minimizing the damage to the subject of it. First, we can resist the collection and recording of Social Security number except where there is a requirement to do so that cannot be satisfied by any alternative. For example, we have to report certain things to the government, and we need to have the Social Security number to do that. However, we should resist its use whenever any other mechanism will suffice. Second, use Social Security number as it was intended as an identifier, never as an authenticator. It is permissible and useful to use the challenge, what are the last 4 digits of your Social Security number, as one of several random challenges in an automated challenge response system. On the other hand, if all you have recorded is 4 digits, that's all you can leak, and you will rarely leak even that. Third, store Social Security numbers only in structured databases, never flat files. Use the database manager access control to resist gratuitous copies. Use database manager backup and recovery to resist Social Security leakage, Social Security number leakage from backup. Fourth, if all you are trying to do is disambiguate common names, the last 4 digits will do. You don't need to have the whole thing. Fifth, resist storing, transmitting, copying, or displaying the Social Security number in the clear. If you think that it is necessary to make copies of Social Security numbers, consider tokenization. If you think it's necessary to display it, consider having the user key enter it and then tell him if it got it right. Consider displaying only a part of it, like the last 4. These are ideas that I have accumulated over a few decades of living with this problem. I do not represent that these constitute a complete list. I am sure that there are others, and some of you know what they are. Again, as law enforcement and security professionals, we cannot solve this over-constrained problem. However, by adhering to these and other practices, we can at least avoid aggravating it. That will make us look like professionals and earn us the big bucks. See you next week.
Thank you very much, Bill. I certainly appreciate it.